The giant robot in One Piece on Egghead Island has been a very hot button topic for a long time now, and just now we're starting to see it get active, and we're starting to think more how it might play into the story and how it might play into the battle that Luffy is getting into at the end of chapter 1109 when Saturn is summoning the rest of the Gorosei to Egghead Island. We're seeing so much development right now, and I think this is the proof that everyone needs to see that we are getting into the final saga of One Piece. It's super clear now that what is being set up is the end game enemies. We still have the God's Knights to see and their potential, but I think it's clear that right now the Gorosei are the ones being summoned to Egghead. I made a video on how I think that that's a hockey related power and how it relates to Shanks, so I'll make sure that video is tagged down below. Go and check that out because I think that it really explains maybe the next step that hockey can be taken to, and I don't think we'll see characters like Luffy and the Straw Hats use it, but I think it might play into the end game of One Piece in some respects. But the giant robot is going to be the focus on this video, and I want to mainly address the potential that it has in Luffy's battle in Egghead Island against Gorosei members and against Saturn in particular. We know that Saturn clearly has experience fighting Luffy and fighting Nika in particular. He doesn't have experience fighting Luffy, but through fighting Nika, he gained knowledge of the Gum Gum fruit and its abilities and how to counter it. We see that in chapter 1109 when Luffy sends both Kizaru and Saturn flying. Saturn seems to be able to manipulate what Luffy has done to him in sort of his advantage and kind of use himself as like a boomerang. I think this kind of shows the potential that others can take Luffy's kind of like silliness aspect that he kind of like he puts on people when he hits them with a hard attack, and you can kind of manipulate it and you can like continue its ability of affecting you but maybe warp it in your own way, because we know that Luffy's fruit has to do with dreams in some form or another and making realities possible. So I would believe that it would make sense if someone affected by his attacks could use his own attacks against him, because they can use their own will and use the ability that they're affected by to counter against Luffy. I think this is something we're going to see a lot more heading into the final saga of One Piece. I mean, especially against the Gorosei members, we can assume that most of the elder ones have experience fighting Gum Gum users, in particular Nika. There's a lot that Oda can do from this, especially when we think about some of the older characters that maybe haven't been introduced or fleshed out. Clearly, Emu. This is someone who is not being summoned to Egghead. We only see 4 summoning circles surrounding Saturn, and I think that this shows that he's the only one that's being left out of this equation. He's remaining at Marijoy, and he's keeping himself safe, and he's sending his minions into the fray. I think that this shows the stakes that are also at play right now. When Vegapunk set off this major announcement that we haven't heard yet, this is when Saturn calls in the reinforcements, and not just 1 or 2, but the rest of the Gorosei members. That means they're done playing around and they want to put a stop to what is happening at Egghead Island, what Vegapunk is doing. Luffy, Bonnie, the Giants now, Dory and Bragi. I'm going to get into how they influence this as well. But there's just so much that is going to happen in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chapters. I mean, probably more than that, given the more beginning stages of the battle that we are getting into. The giant robot is likely going to become very active and assist Luffy along with Dory and Bragi. I think that we could potentially see a sacrifice in this situation. I don't think that Vegapunk will be the only one to die or potentially get captured. I think it's been a while since we've seen someone on the Straw Hats kind of be a victim in a sense. I know it's a little strange to think about it that way, but I think a kidnapping by the world government could kind of give them a sort of advantage over the Straw Hats that they desperately need right now. And, you know, we've seen them attempt to do this, and we can't forget that Lucci and Kaku are still in play. And we know we haven't seen very much of them in quite a few chapters, but they still exist on the island, and there's a lot of stuff that can be fleshed out and stuff that Oda can do in terms of mixing up the story in the direction that it might go. But one thing is for certain, we are in the final saga, and Oda is setting us up for potentially the greatest battles in anime history. I mean, we know what Oda is capable of doing, what he did in Wano, Dressrosa. What he's done time and time again is show us excellence, and he will continue to deliver on this. It's just a guarantee. The only question is, how far will he take it? How intense will the battles get? And how many lives will be lost? I mean, we know that he is not afraid of killing people at this point in the story. And I think that it just shows that there's not much that is really stopping him from doing whatever he wants in the One Piece story. And I think he's going to continue to do this and just push the limits of what we expect. Nobody knows what's going to happen next, all right? What I think is going to happen is the Giant and Dorian Bragi are going to intervene and help Luffy, all right? I think that potentially what's going to happen is they will either, defeat the Gorosei. I think this has a very low likelihood, all right? But it is a possibility. Another possibility is they potentially wound a couple of the Gorosei and cause the Gorosei to retreat and therefore protect Egghead, all right? But then the final situation is that Egghead is destroyed and that Luffy and the rest of them are forced to evade and escape the world government. I think this is the most probable scenario. Egghead, it seems, is destined to be destroyed. This has been clear since, nearly the beginning of the arc, but ever since the Buster Call was initiated and then stopped, it's clear that the Gorosei want everything on this island to just go into the sea. And I would bet that they will potentially use a very powerful tool or weapon that they have that we haven't seen very much of. Potentially, the Sky Flame that affected Sabo. We could see this. Maybe we know that it's limited in some capacity right now, especially because it was powered in some capacity by Vegapunk. But I wonder if the Gorosei and Imu in particular have a way of giving it one more charge that could be used, and I think we might see it. I think that its use earlier in the story was kind of a setup, and it wasn't really used to a full potential, and it wasn't also used against like a main character. I mean, we know that Sabo and nearly all of those villagers who were on the island got away. So there's a lot that Oda can do with many different aspects that he's introduced recently into the story, and I think that he's going to do this, and we should expect it to happen. That's all I have for this One Piece video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.